Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you about this sword right here. This is made by Nik Miller. It's a custom long sword. And before I get into the video, a couple quick disclaimers. First and foremost, this is a review sample. It was sent to me for free. If you think that makes me biased, you know at the start. The other bit that you should know is Sword for Nick reached out to me and said, "Hey Matt, would you like to break this sword?" And I said yes, because I might be a kind of crazy, but I'm not the kind of crazy that turns down the opportunity to smash swords and play with them and have that kind of fun, which I certainly said yes I would do. So do know as well this video is going to be destructive. I'm going to push this sword to failure. If that makes you wince, then this is not the video for you. However, I'm doing so with the maker's permission. So I know a lot of times seeing somebody's very painstaking work get smashed is not a fun thing for some people to watch. The maker of said sword has sent it my way with the specific direction to do just that, which I'm going to oblige. So know that it didn't cost me any money and that I'm going to smash it. The other bit that you should know is I don't study historic European martial arts, so why I'm the best guy to smash this, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't ask those kind of questions. This is going to look clumsy in my hands. I do study swordsmanship, but if I look like I don't know what I'm doing, it's because I probably don't. The last thing that you should know is that this sword is about $1,000 in its current configuration, which is no small amount of money, but Sword for Nick lives, I believe, in the United States, and so, you know, time costs money, materials cost money, everything costs a lot more money than it used to. And if you have some skill at finishing things by hand, if you're handy with sanding, if you are good at flicking bugs out of your ear when they interrupt your review process, neat, you could clean this up and save a little bit of money. However, if you don't, then you're going to have to pay Sword for Nick about another $1,000 to get a more beautified version. Now, I can't blame him for not sending me a beautified version because, well, if you're going to send some crazy guy on the internet a sword to smash, it's probably better not to pour, you know, copious hours of cleaning it up to see it only, you know, destroyed against the croquet stake of doom. So do know he is capable of making something prettier, but it's kind of actually interesting to know that he not finish one really pristinely and charge you a lot less money. That's not a thing that I typically see smiths offer, and if you have the capability of finishing it up yourself, then it might be a way to save a little bit of money, or, you know, I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but anyway, it's a possibility. So I can't show you what Nick is capable of, but if I have some extra photos of his work and things like that, I will show them where I can. But this one is a sword that he sent me, and it is a little rough. It has lots of tool marks all over the place, so just know I'm going to harp on them, but the beauty was not necessarily the intention of sending it to me. As is tradition, I'm going to start with the end bit down here, the pommel. What I see is a really well-shaped pommel, and surprisingly enough, at least initially in swinging this around, it doesn't seem to dig into my hands when I move it around. So I don't know why this wheel pommel seems to work better for me, but it doesn't seem to cut the flub of my hands as wheel pommels typically do. I can make out a peen. I do see hammer marks. I see a lot of tool marks and scratching. I also see that it's like canted in and shaped well. It doesn't exactly look like it tapers in, but maybe that's my eye. It domes out quite well and is generally shaped with a little bit of panache and dimension. I'd imagine more zazz could be added with additional dollars. It also, I don't know if it's hollow. It doesn't feel hollow. I'm knocking on it, it feels like solid steel, but it also doesn't feel solid. So I'm not sure, not sure what's going on there. I'll have to check with Sword for Nick. The handle is wood cord and wrapped in paracord just to have something more or less, I think, to use. As it is, the handle is indexed. I can kind of tell where the edge is, but I can't tell exactly where it is. It's not the friendliest indexing sword, but it's comfortable enough. It gets more round towards the pommel area here, meaning that I can kind of turn it and navigate it and maneuver it in my hand reasonably well. The paracord feels like if I have a thrust, I have something to kind of pull back on, but in the cut, it's kind of squirrely. If I hold it really tight and push, this turns around in my hand partially because of the narrow grip, also because the paracord is a little slick. If I really white knuckle it, try to turn, I can kind of hang on to it, but I suspect that when I go and start clanking on things, that this is going to turn quite a bit in my hand. I think that has more to do with the shape of the handle, playing with the paracord than anything else, but something I'm suspecting is going to happen. The handle shape isn't bad. It's just one of these things where it's not a particularly refined sword, so how much can I harp on it? I don't know if this is really more of a test of durability and metallurgy, or if it's you know, something about shaping or not. But I'm going to comment and critique on all the things. Suffice to say, though, a better grip, I think, would make it feel more sturdy in my hand, lock in a little better, and enhance the driver's experience of the sword. This S Crossguard right here has actually quite a bit more dimension than I would say. I really actually like the pommel and the Crossguard here. The tips spatulate a little bit, but they're pretty robust. It kind of thins out and swells in some areas, and it seems pretty sturdy. You know, we'll see. I'll whack it into a few things, but it seems reasonably well shaped, but also handmade. I kind of like this. It also isn't too wide. Sometimes the S quillins like turn around too much, and if I were to wear this on a belt, it like hooks on things and gets a little obnoxious. I'm not sensing that as the case in this particular case right here. It seems relatively solid, and I don't also make out anything that looks off center, like nothing is waving around or odd. I guess we'll see how it holds up, but I generally like the shape, and with a little bit of refinement or maybe some additional detailing, I could see how this hilt would be a pretty handsome combination. The blade is an interesting one. Again, it has lots of tool marks. It looks like there's been some effort to give the blade almost like a slight hollow ground, maybe. The diamond center ridge runs pretty consistently. I don't see it waver a whole lot. It does have a little bit of wiggle, but not a ton. The edges as well also have some kind of dips and groove. There's a bit of handmadiness to this. Nik seemed to put a pretty keen edge on it. At least I don't want to do much more than kind of touch it here. I can't tell if that's a burr or a really keen edge, but it feels like it has the capability of cutting quite well. I'll put dimensions and weapon dynamics in the description down below. The sword looks like it's going to be whippy and wiggly, and it is not. It is reasonably rigid. So if I flex it, it doesn't really have a whole lot of give. It also feels like I am capable of getting this tip really where I want it. It's a reasonably long sword for me, and my hand feels like connected almost right to the tip as I move this around. The tip also is reinforced a little bit. Nik has done some little subtle details here, and the shape of the blade is pretty consistent and nice, and the tips swells out a little bit, which is something that is often missed in sword reproductions that I see, or at least I don't see them attempted to be reproduced. This one has a reinforced tip, which is nice to see. Gentle hollow grinding, reinforced tip, a blade that looks like it's going to be whippy and jiggly, but is quite rigid. At the same time, feels like I am connected to the blade. It feels like it's going to move really well. Oddly, the blade node is a little bit lower. That's not necessarily super uncommon from swords that I review, but I don't know where it's supposed to be. It does feel like, though, if I really want to get a good cut, I'm going to have to be a little closer than I normally would think I would need to be, because I want to hit about here, and my brain tells me to hit out here. So that's going to be something to figure out. The other bit is the blade node is kind of right in here, and what that tells me, or the hilt node I should say, is kind of somewhere down here. And that means that when I start going heavy, this is going to give me a fair bit of shock in my hand, because I tend to put it right here. And so when I start impacting things, I'm suspecting that it's going to turn in my hand, and I'm going to feel those vibrations quite a bit. This is all speculation. If my experience in sorting has taught me things that are correct, then those will probably pan out. If I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground, which is also a possibility, then maybe everything will feel fine. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm expecting. There's, I think, a lot of potential here, though. I really like the reinforced tip. I like the hollow grind. I like the feeling of this blade. It has, I don't know, just, it's fun. And also, the round pommel is not something that I tend to gravitate to. This one seems to feel pretty solid in my hand and not herky-jerky. There's a lot to like here. A lot of design elements, I think, with another $1,000 worth of time would be quite fun to look at and hold. As it is, though, I'm going to start using this, and we will see what happens. All right, now I'm just going to move it around a little bit, give you some idea of how it moves maybe. The swollen tip makes it swish around quite a bit. I can hear it moving even with some of the noise going on around me. A good swish has it kind of go whoosh through the air. gonna start with some pool noodles here. I'm gonna try the tip. I'm gonna try the That is fun. That cut really well. Well done. So pool noodles are not particularly difficult to cut. What is this telling us? One, it tells us that Nik knows how to put an edge on a sword because I didn't touch it up at all. This is all his work. Also, when I cut with the tip, it didn't really do much, and cutting kind of out at the end of the noodle is usually easier. Also, it's a warmer day. These are a little more whippy and jiggly. In the really cold weather, they tend to pop apart a little bit easier. On a warm day like today, they can be difficult to cut without a keen edge. So this sword has one. Nik knows how to put it on. That's a good thing. Also, it tells me that it cuts really well when I cut where the sword wants me to cut with it. And it was easy. I seemed to have reasonably good edge control. Most of the angles were about as good as I can get them. The pool noodles popped apart, and I felt generally in control moving it around on various cuts. And the noodle didn't yeet out of the container either when I did some like upward cuts or horizontal cuts. Those sometimes will cause the apparatus to lose its hold and fly all over the place. It's good performance. Long-winded way of saying it did real good there. Has a good little song to it. Ching! This is nasty. Oh. Oh. That's the first time I've gotten a tip stuck in a water bottle. The reinforced tip lodges its way in. Can kind of be hard to get out. At least right away here, I'm not seeing any damage to the tip. Ooh, when I just did this, ooh, I feel that all the way up my arm. Bleach in the face. Wow. So it's cutting with the tip, and it also doesn't look like it's tearing it apart. The cuts are reasonably clean. All right, let's see if I can get just the top off. No. That was awful. Okay, try again. More or less the same place, making a big mess, getting schmutz all over my head. Still straight. Now I'm gonna just try and giving it a swack. Still straight. One side of the tip looks a little bigger than the other. Ooh, okay, got a little bend. I had to hit that sumbitch pretty hard though to get that to bend, but I was able to get a little bit of a bend out at the tip. Oddly though, that's not where I hit it. So now it's kind of straightened out. So I don't know if there's a heat treatment issue out here, because I think I'm hitting it more in this area, but it's bending out towards the tip. Maybe it's wrapping around. I'm not sure, but I can get it to bend by hitting it on my stand. Not super uncommon, but would be nice if I couldn't do that. Okay, so this is out with the edge. That's pretty good. That cuts better than it has any right to. Wow. Okay, I do have to work for it. Like I'm giving it a good cut, but it's not that much work. Not my best cut. It's a better angle. It's getting pretty deep in there. Dry cardboard tube. Ooh! So when I hit this, I feel it all. All right. I'm gonna get some safety glasses. This is, I have to hit pretty hard. So when I hold the pommel, I don't feel it as much. Oh! Oh! Just a shock in my hand. Hold it on the node. Oh, that's worse. So what I'm noticing in doing this is, one, the blade is staying straight. So when I bent it earlier, hitting it, it's not bending anymore, but I'm able to pretty consistently get the blade in an area which is not nothing. I play with swords quite a bit, but I'm less accustomed to using swords of this style, and you certainly get, I don't know, it's not quite like riding a bike. It's easy to be inaccurate, I would say. So the fact that I'm generally hitting inconsistently in areas somewhat surprising, and speaks to the kind of nimbleness, the comfort and ergonomics of this sword. At the same time, I'm not feeling, I mean, the blade still has a bite. I've probably lost some edge, but it's still sharp enough that I wouldn't want to hold and run my fingers down the edge. It's maintaining its edge quite well. We'll see if I can get this cut in two. So one thing I would call out is I feel the shock, but I didn't notice it. I didn't notice that I'm readjusting my grip too much. I'm not swinging one-handed. It seems to stay pretty locked in. I thought it would turn more, and I can actually turn it pretty easily in my hand. But I think maybe grabbing the pommel and the fact that I can do that comfortably, still deliver like a really hard hit with reasonable comfort. But my hand is tingly a little bit from some of that. It wasn't turning as much as I thought it would in my hand, doing some of that aggressive stuff though. So that is somewhat surprising. I do feel the shock. In one hand, nah, it's not turning around too much. I feel like it's reasonably stable. I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought it would wiggle around. We'll see what happens when we do the croquet stake of doom though. That tends to skate and cause the blade to turn. I'll come in and it'll skate off, and then it tends to turn in my hand, and then I have to adjust. So if you were using this to fight in armor or something like that. Now, before I move on to further abusive stuff, I think this is pretty safe to say, as far as most people would take it with a relatively expensive sword, and the blade is still reasonably straight, apart from the areas where I had bent it earlier and it's not perfectly aligned. The edge has held up pretty well, so I'm not seeing any chips, pings, dings, and it's probably lost a little kind of the hair popping edge, but it's not diminished terribly. So before I move on, tip of my hat to as far as it's come, as well as it's done. I want to play a little bit though on this piece of armor thing that I have here, just to show the nimbleness. All right, so you imagine that this is an opponent and we are facing off sword rise. I feel very confident in knocking over the Greek yogurt, not hitting anything, and destroying it. That was classy. The sword did all the work there. It had nothing to do with a poorly balanced stand at all. That was a useful test. You're welcome, everyone. It definitely doesn't smell like moldy yogurt. All right, let's try again. So I have the stand set up so that this hypothetically could be my opponent's sword, and I can move it around. Now, it's not going to give me as much feedback as a real opponent would, but you get the idea. And so I feel like I'm very confident in moving this to where I want, and I'm going to practice coming up and thrusting to the container, which kind of poked off. But like you could imagine that I thrust into the opponent's eye, and there's that. It's not working too well. I haven't thought this through exactly, but I could come around and down. Yeah, into the armpit, up, around, on the arm, into the face. I can half sword, into the face. Ooh, opponent got me, even though he's not real. Opponent now has more feedback, but that's sharp. Oh. Into the armpit. Into the armpit. Dick. Eyes. Dick. So in Japanese armor, there's usually a sash here, so cutting where the obi is not necessarily a bad thing. This is an odd apparatus, but it does let me try a few things. The sword is very nimble, suffice to say, is the point that I'm trying to drive home. After whacking into a metal rod, I now see the very minorest of chipping. So metal on metal. Oh, bit of rolling over here. I lost the finer part of the edge. Oh man, even an adult like me could clean this up. How does it puncture armor? Not well. But for a drive straight into the armor, I mean, nothing. They're like maybe the finest point of the tip is gone, but the tip is still there. I can very effectively still jam it into things. All right, time for yeeting tests. All right, sword friends, you may have noticed that I'm not throwing it at the Tree of Woe. The Tree of Woe has become part of this pile of sadness. So I'm gonna start throwing the sword at this pile of logs. We'll see if I can hit it reliably or not. Chances are I can't, but we'll see. Okay, got a little bend. It's kind of straight. God, fuck. Huh? Oh, that was bad. From a yeech perspective, the sword might be straighter than when I started. Tip test. So that was a pretty, I mean, that's a steep bend, and I'm not seeing any damage. The tip also might have a little bit of a cant to it, but not much. All right. Whew. Okay, next thing. All right, sword friends, I'm gonna get handsy with it now, and I'm gonna use the zombie tool Zakizashi Zanto that has been broken on my channel as a guest lecturer today. So I've got pool noodles around the sword and in this cardboard tube, and some minor effort to keep me safe. This is not secured. I'm gonna hit the quillins and we're gonna see how they hold up, okay? Is a good sign. Okay, quillin is still tight. Let's do a proper hit again. Takes a licking, keeps on ticking. How are we? I don't actually feel a lot of wiggle. All right, let's go the other side. This side. All right, quillion failure. And I have broken the crossguard completely. Still doesn't want to come off. Credit there. I hit that pretty hard. It eventually shattered. Would have been good to bend instead of break though, but c'est la vie. All right. Prepare for the end. All right, sword friends, I am going to start hitting on the croquet stick of doom. We will see how it takes. The crossguard is gone, but I still feel like we can do this. Okay. The edge bites in, but I feel it turning in my hand with this glove here. You'll be able to see it pretty easily with this thing. So if I hit it and it turn, there we go, I lost it. So I'm gonna hold it pretty tight here. No, I lost it again. Okay, 2 hands, hopefully my thing stays on. Lots of edge damage. All right, I wasn't really counting, so I'm gonna start over. It's not fair, but I'm gonna do 10 light strikes. All right, so I've got 10 strikes, more than 10 strikes, 10 light ones, 10 hard ones, and I'm like a millimeter or 2 into the edge. All right. Ow! Whew. It's wiggly and shaking my hand. Okay. Okay. You have to diminish it. Let's see how it goes now. Okay. More diminishing. Ow! All right, sword friends. Well, I have to figure out some other option here because she doesn't want to break. This is the first. This is the strongest sword I have ever tested at this point. I have cheated. I have diminished the edge, uncommon to do. I've banged it into this croquet stick till my hands really hurt. I've pushed this sword at this point as much or more than I have any other sword. So it's time to get cheap. Time to get cheap. I got to think of something. All right, sword friends. Admittedly, this is one of the toughest swords that I've tested, but there are some things that are adding to it a little bit. And I don't want to take it away from the fact that this is shockingly durable. I don't know what Nik made it from, but it's probably unobtanium. There are some things, though, that are causing me to not swing as hard as I could, though I've swung really hard, things that have broken other blades, and it hasn't broken this one, and I've already cheated some. So I take it to the croquet stick of doom, usually diminish one side, then diminish the other side. That's usually a recipe to break the sword, but it didn't work here. So I brought out the other piece, and I was able to diminish the edge even more, and that usually has broken swords when all else fails. Some edge-on-edge contact. People say it's even too quick when I do that. It's not really doing much here. Now, I can't swing as hard as I want, as many times as I want, because all the shock is going into my hand, and it's really quite painful. So the crossguard is gone. The handle is beginning to explode. Just the tang is here, and the wood around it is cracked. It's still not breaking, though, and I have given it some very hard swings. I'm not able to swing it in control anymore at this point. So I'm going to diminish it further with this metal cutting blade, and we will see what happens then. I still don't know if that's going to work. We'll find out, eh? Fuck! Whew. All right, sword friends, gnats keep flying in my mouth and it's making it hard to close things down. I am going to recap some stuff. So, feedback. The Quillins took a little less punishment than I would like, though let it be known they did bend before they broke, and they did take some really hard strikes. I was swinging pretty hard because I felt reasonably safe with the thing wrapped up in a pool noodle. I hit it pretty hard, eventually they broke. The sword was incredibly difficult to break. Now, I've given the caveat that I couldn't swing as hard as I wanted to because the handle started coming off and it was really shaking violently in my hand. But you see how I'm swinging this, and you've seen other swords break from some limp-wristed little thwacks. This, I'm swinging pretty hard enough to feel the vibrations in my hand. And I was, about ready to give up. It's also worth noting that not only did the sword take several strikes to break, it broke my stand. This needs to be fixed. It's now moving around. The 6x6 is displaced. It moved the stand around with a 50-pound or 80-pound rock on it and some other bracing. I'm hitting it hard enough to do some stuff, and the sword still took a lot of damage. I had to diminish it with additional sword strikes and eventually break out a power tool. I know I used to do that before I found the croquet stake of doom and a recipe to really diminish the sword by chopping one end and then reversing the edge and breaking it on the other. I haven't had to break out a power tool and diminish the sword for a really long time, so this is quite a surprise. And more a surprise that it's this kind of light, well, not light, but a very nimble, agile sword that's on the, not thinner side, but also it's not a grotesque, overbuilt sword. This was harder to break than the zombie tool sword, and it's a lot longer and a lot thinner, and that deserves some commendation. I've also since seen some of Nik's other work. He is a very capable person doing all sorts of crazy cool stuff. If you're interested, I will link his contact info in the description down below. These pieces are going to go back to Nik at his request. I'm sad to see them go because this is the toughest sword I've thus tested. There are some other things I would note though before I end the video. There's some other things with the handle being exposed that show also Nik knows what he's doing. The tang is quite large, very beefy, and the shoulders are rounded. There's no 90-degree ends there, making it a pretty strong thing. I would say there's some opportunity to balance out the nodes and things like that, but at the same time, in terms of making a good sword, it bent a little bit when I thwapped it on the stand. And the Quillins broke a little easy, but other than that, like dynamically, this was great. It had a reinforced tip. It had a really keen, sharp edge. It felt really good in the hand for a very long, and it even made me like wheel pommels. This has been an absolute treat to test, and so special thanks to Mr. Nik Miller for sending it my way. It has been a joy. I hope you have all also enjoyed as well. Cheers, and thanks for watching. I need a beer.